Welcome to the Women Leaders Association Daily Member Podcast, where we believe we go further, faster, and have more fun when we go together. I'm your host, Julianne Kirkland. And in each Daily Member Podcast, we will pick out a great speaker from one of our meetings that we thought you would enjoy. You can access hundreds of recent speakers, book summaries, great articles, and more at no additional charge through your membership portal. If you would like to get involved in a Women Leaders Association mastermind group or find a networking group near you, or if you just need access to the membership portal, simply go to womenleaderspodcast.com to be connected. Now let's tune in for this incredible message.
And hello, everyone, and I'll join in the thanks for you joining us today. I know we're all busy people and very much appreciate you giving your time. As part of Shelley's introduction, I am Dr. Kim Davenport. I'm a proud Nashville resident as the program director for the Leadership in Organizational Performance program at Vanderbilt University. I also have responsibility for a new pilot that we are working on. It's an online master's program called Leading Organizations. And so as part of my self-introduction, I'll make the segue to saying academia is my second career. Before joining Vanderbilt, the companies that I worked were global Fortune 500 companies in a variety of different interests and interest areas and industries. And the diversity of those companies that I worked for included automotive, retail, energy management, to name a few actually, and financial services. But the one thing that, even though it was diverse industries, what I found that I was able to do was that I was able to fill a need they all had, which is specializing in talent management, building and developing talent, which I want you to, with that backdrop, with the corporate career and the academic career, but especially in the human resources area of expertise, that's why when Shelley asked the topic, one of the topics I'd like to talk about is I jumped on the mentorship and sponsorship. Because I will tell you that regardless of how talented you are, success is tied to opportunities. And it pays to have an advocate. So with that is my comments. Let's please, I'll take a few more sentences before we go to the next slide. And that is by way of saying, not every Supreme Court justice becomes a pop culture icon. Only one, the notorious RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Ruth broke so many barriers that she was often referred to as a pint-sized powerhouse. And here are a few reasons why. Ruth's accomplishments include a few. I'll highlight some of the more significant. When she started her law career at Harvard, there were 509 students. 500 of them were men. At Columbia Law School, she was one of 12 women in a class of 59, and she shared the honor of being first in class with one other individual. Ruth was the first person, not the first woman, but the first person to be a member of the Harvard Law Review and the Columbia Law Review. And she was the second female to teach law at Rutgers. And while she was there, this is where she really began her advocacy and had the platform to fight for equal rights and equal pay for women. She went on to become Columbia's first female law professor to get tenure. And at Columbia, she argued 6 cases before the Supreme Court, and she won 5. I got to tell you, that's awesome to me because I teach at Vanderbilt, and sometimes I have trouble getting my laundry done on a weekly basis. So you can tell that I'm a huge fan of Ruth Bader Ginsburg and very much appreciate her advocacy for women. And before joining the court, one of the final contributions that she made that was so significant was with the ACLU in terms of creating their first law review journal, as well as leading the Women's Rights Project. 204 years after the Supreme Court had been in existence, and that was when Ruth Bader Ginsburg was sworn in as the second female justice to serve on the Supreme Court. And yet, with all of her potential for greatness, she did actualize that throughout her career. But when Ruth first graduated, she interviewed with 12 different law firms. Not one of them offered her a job. And it wasn't because she was a poor interviewee or she didn't have the right stuff. Ruth faced discrimination as a woman, as a mother, and as a Jew. How did her life change so dramatically? Mentorship and sponsorship played an important role. And I do want to define the terms so we're on the same page. And what's the difference between the two? Well, mentorship involves guiding and advising someone, typically someone who's younger or earlier in their career or they're in a new role. But sponsorship takes the role further. This is where someone becomes an advocate for their mentee. They are advocating for their advancement, for job opportunities, and making introductions. And so for the sponsor, it is these introductions to influential people, actively supporting and advocating for their mentor as the less experienced person. And sponsors provide opportunities for advancement, and through those introductions to perhaps more senior leaders in the organization or an industry. And sponsors also make public endorsements. They talk and act on your behalf. Advocacy is a more powerful tool than mentorship alone. In an article written by Charlotte Westerhouse Renfro entitled, "Why Sponsors Are Key to Women Advancing in the Workplace," she explains and gives advice in this article. And by the way, Professor Dr. Renfro, Westerhouse Renfro, she leads the undergraduate business school at Indiana University. And what she outlines in this article is how important the sponsor, that in addition to giving advice, they use their own platform, their own influence, and their reputation as a leader and as that sponsor to advance their protégés' careers. Sponsors are advocating for their mentor for getting high-profile assignments. And again, as I mentioned earlier, it's that connection and that networking to other people. And sponsors often work in the same organization or perhaps in the same industry. And by that closeness, the ideal sponsor is strategically in a position to help promote their protege. They're able to protect and prepare them for new roles and push them to advance. So again, that is such a major contribution in the difference in sponsorship, in that they're promoting, protecting, preparing, and pushing and nudging, if necessary, for their protege to advance. To affirm how potent sponsorship can be, studies by Catalyst and the Harvard Business Review found that women who have sponsors are in fact more likely to advance in their careers. PayScale recently conducted a study, and they found that women who have sponsors also are paid on average 10% more. And think about it, 10%, that can make a huge difference in the quality of our lives. Though today we are focusing on women mentoring other women, when Ruth graduated from law school, there were no other women in positions of power to help her. She had to use the resources at her disposal. And at the time, that was the Columbia Law School, their alumni, and their faculty, which was an extensive network. But It was mostly male at the time. One of her favorite professors, her mentor, Gerald Gunther, urged Judge Edwin Palmieri to employ her as a clerk on the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York. And as the story goes, Professor Gunther was apparently so forceful in his endorsement that he threatened to never recommend another Columbia Law School student to Judge Palmieri if he didn't give Ruth a chance. That's what I call sponsorship. And as her career progressed, Ruth finally had the benefit of working with other female colleagues and mentors. In her words, the most helpful big sister anyone could have was Sandra Day O'Connor, the first female Supreme Court justice. The breaker of glass ceilings, if they're breaking the glass ceilings, they really don't have anyone to emulate. And Ruth commented on numerous occasions about her internal gratitude to Sandra Day O'Connor for helping her arrival at the Supreme Court and helping her have a softer landing. Mentorship and sponsorship gave Ruth Bader Ginsburg those opportunities she needed to prove herself, and she paid it forward. After Justice O'Connor retired, when Justices Sonia Sotomayor and Elena Kagan joined the court, Ruth played a big role at helping them learn the ropes. She became the big sister. And despite her busy schedule, she was known for taking the time to meet and support her other young women who were entering the law field, students, as well as her own law clerks. And unlike in Ruth Bader Ginsburg's early days, the Pew Research Center recently did a study and discovered what many of us know: women today comprise the majority of the workforce. So you would think it would be inevitable that more of us would be filling executive roles. However, a recent study of women CEOs, and this was just as recent as the summer of 2020, pointed out, or they discovered, that 9% of Fortune 500 CEOs are women. This ties back to Charlotte Westerhouse Renfro's article. Advancing women might be a hot topic, but the numbers are not. Few of us have made it to the tops of our fields. And with mentoring being considered such a critical component to career success, DDI, an international leadership and a development firm, wanted to study and learn more about what are those factors that most help and contribute to women's upward mobility. They surveyed businesswomen from 19 countries and 30 different industries. And one of the things they discovered was, and one of the comments in their reports, they said, there are few Oprah Winfreys, few Meg Whitmans, and few Hillary Rodham Clintons. And even though the differences between these three dynamic, powerful women at the height of their careers, they were very different people, but the one thing that they had in common was mentoring, the role that mentoring played in helping them along the way. Mentoring has many known benefits of the mentor. There are, from a broader perspective, certainly mentoring helps the mentee learn the business, and they get the opportunities to meet more people. But one of the things in the DDI research that they also discovered, how important mentoring is, especially for women who are in industries where there are fewer women, or even in companies, because that's where it's especially difficult to build your social capital. So those are areas where mentoring is especially helpful. And as I mentioned before, there are benefits to the mentor and the organization. Certainly from an organization's perspective, if you have mentors, the company gets to retain the wisdom of longer-term employees, And there, with the mentoring and the networking, there can be exchange of knowledge that helps by putting mentors in touch with other parts of the organizations. And the benefit for women is certainly, and the company, is the professional development that occurs for employees, and it can help help increase productivity and reduce turnover. So there are these multiple, for the mentee, for the mentor, as well as the company, advantages to having a strong mentoring types of programs. And you would think, given all these pluses, that more professional women would have had the experience of being mentored. But as the research that DDI conducted, as it turns out, they said the answer is no. 63% of DDI's interviewees, so you recall it was over 30 different industries and 19 different countries. Of those participants, 63% said they'd never had a formal mentor. But what they did say is that they, as women, would be delighted, they would be willing to mentor others if asked. So DDI they wanted to understand this conundrum, and they came to this basic but incredibly important conclusion. If you want a mentor, you need to ask. Don't wait for help to come to you. And if a woman is not available, find an appropriate man. Once you find your mentor, clearly define your desired learning goals. You don't want to waste your mentor's time or your time by being vague about what you want to accomplish. DDI summarized their actions both for the mentee and companies in the format of stop, start, and continue. And this will be a build slide. I'll be kind of in rapid succession saying next. But for women, they said, stop waiting for mentors to be assigned. Next, start seeking out mentors yourself. Go find your mentor. Next, and as women, those of us who are in leadership roles, continue to accept those invitations to mentor others. Organizations, stop leaving mentoring to chance, and start creating mentoring programs. Make mentoring contagious by creating formalized programs, providing support and training. And next, and continue to encourage mentoring with those formal programs. When I was introduced today as the director of the Leadership and Organizational Performance Program at Vanderbilt, or LOP as we call it, just a few other things I will share with you. It is a 2-year master's level program, and it prepares students to lead in both the profit and nonprofit world. So in the corporate setting, consulting firms, to nonprofits, educational types of organizations. So it's that whole range of organizations that we're preparing leaders to be effective leaders. And we have a really successful a good success rate. 90% of our students within 4 months of graduating have a job and are employed. They have a job offer that they're really excited about. And internships are key to our program success. Students get the chance to apply what they've learned in the classroom. We really emphasize theory and practice. And through these internships, they get professional placements across a variety of industries. An example and the value of mentorship that I want to share with you, as well as 6 degrees of separation that it became a true phenomena in my career as well. In this, the story was it's 6 years ago or so, and I was working at HR as an HR leader at Schneider Electric. And Schneider, for those of you here in Nashville know that Schneider has a very large footprint, a large office here in Nashville. And I got a call from one of my colleagues, Corbett Doyle. She is a senior lecturer here at Vanderbilt. And she called and she said, Kim, I need a favor. I've got this fabulous student but she needs an internship, and I'm just calling to see if there's any chance you could assist. And I interviewed the student. Her name is Amna, and she was wonderful. But at the time, there were no openings in my particular division. But I advocated for her in another part of the company. And at the end of her internship, Amna was offered a full-time job. And since then, she's been promoted twice, and she is now Schneider Electric's Director of HR in Toronto for the global supply chain. Amna was a direct beneficiary of Dr. Doyle and my mentoring and sponsorship. And with that being the beneficiary of that hand up, she takes delight in closing the loop and closing that circle. She continues to support our LOP program. She offers up opportunities for class projects. She offers students internships. And most recently, she hired another of our graduates. So a great applause to Amna. All right. As we continue on this, I want to stay on this slide a little bit longer, though. As both protege as well as sponsor, Amna's actions align with the views of Sylvia Ann Hewlett, and she wrote the book, Forget a Mentor, Find a Sponsor. And she really delves in a chapter in that book about the relationship, this reciprocal relationship of the sponsorship protege relationship, and that it's a two-way street. And so now we can go to the next slide. And what she points out is that it's, and this is consistent with the other the articles and research that I've mentioned before. But as she points out, is that the sponsor is really going out on a limb by advocating for the promotion of their protege, as well as at times perhaps providing air cover. And I know all of you probably in your career, I certainly have in mine, I've had those opportunities where I've needed air cover. And it's fabulous when you have someone you can trust and turn to. Now, the two-way street part of this, the protege, they deliver results. They're trustworthy, they're loyal, they're reliable. They build their own personal brand that enhances the sponsor's reputation. Because that sponsor, by going out on the limb for someone who really has these qualities, that reflects their ability to be able to attract and develop talent, which helps their reputation. While Amna went from being a student to working in the corporate world, I sort of did the reverse. Over 25 years as an HR leader, there came a point where it was time for a change. And that's when I shifted to academia. And even though Amna and I had very different goals, both of us have benefited from mentoring and sponsorship, as well as building our professional network. So I want to tell you a little bit about my story and how mentoring and benefit has helped me. And this goes way back in my early part of my professional life, late 20s, early 30s, when I was working on my PhD. And Dr. Donna Wood was a member of my dissertation committee. And she also became a mentor and a colleague. But at the time, she was teaching at the University of Pittsburgh. And she invited me to come to, as we called the University of Pittsburgh, Pitt. It was, that's a nice term, but I went to Pitt. I stayed at her home. I got to know her family, as well as I got to introduce to a number of people in her professional network. Two other female colleagues stand out, Dr. Jean Logston and Dr. Patsy Llewellyn. They were professors at the time, one at University of New Mexico, the other at University of Southern California. And the four of us co-authored a book together. And, you know, because I greatly value my professional network and my colleagues, I've stayed in touch with Donna and Jean and Patsy. We've all stayed in touch with one another over the decades of job changes and moves around the country. And when I applied for my role at Vanderbilt, all three of them wrote letters of recommendation that were extremely helpful. So my message is, Whether you are just starting out, you're experiencing a mid-career job change, or perhaps you're reinventing yourself at the tail end of your career, mentors, sponsors, and those social professional networks are a tremendous asset. If you need a sponsor, ask. If you have time and you want to help another woman to achieve her goals, become a mentor and a sponsor. And if you legitimately don't have the time, if someone's asked you to be your mentor and you simply don't have the time, take a moment to use your network to see if you have any associates or colleagues that might be willing to assist. Sometimes just sending an email on someone's behalf can change their life. I hope that I've inspired you to think seriously about mentorship and sponsorship.
Hey, my friend, if you enjoyed listening to this podcast, be sure to rate, review, and share your biggest takeaway. And if you're wanting more, you can access hundreds of recent speakers, book summaries, great articles, and more at no additional charge through your membership portal. You can also get involved in a Women Leaders Association mastermind group or a networking group near you. Or if you just need to access your membership portal, simply go to womenleaderspodcast.com to be connected. Because here at Women Leaders Association, we believe we go further, faster, and have more fun when we go together. That's all for today, my friends. Bye for now.